Here we go. Hey, everyone. My guest today is David Marshall Grant. David's Broadway credits include Bent, co-starring with Richard Gere, and Angels in America, for which he was nominated for a Tony Award and a Drama Desk Award. He has appeared in over 25 movies. Some of those titles include American Flyer, The Chamber, Air America, Stepford Wives, and The Devil Wears Prada. On television, some of his many credits include Bobby Kennedy in Citizen Cohn and The Band Played On, 30-something, Party Down, and Career Opportunities in Murder and Mayhem, which will air summer 2023 on Hulu.
And they've changed the title, actually. It's now Murder and Other Business on Hulu.
Got it. They did a focus group and
yeah.
That's what they came up with. His first play, Snakebit, was produced off-Broadway and was nominated for a Drama Desk Award and Outer Critics Circle Award, and was named one of Time Magazine's best plays of the year. When I say first play, I mean as a playwright. Other plays that David wrote include Current Events at the Manhattan Theater Club and Penn at Playwrights Horizons. He has been a writer or executive producer or both on shows like Brothers and Sisters, Nashville, Smash, Code Black, and A Million Little Things. Recently, I got to see in a movie theater a film he co-wrote with Dan Savage called Spoiler Alert. I loved it. It's beautiful. I love you. You are beautiful. Welcome, David Marshall Grant, to the podcast.
Thank you. It is so delightful to be talking and seeing you, Ilana Levine, and it's amazing.
So, full disclosure, David is one of my dearest longtime friends, chosen family, all of the things that you would want in a friend, which is hilarious, loyal, brilliant, and handsome, and of course, talented. So David Marshall Grant, I want to approach this conversation as if I don't know you well, because I don't want to assume that my listeners know everything that I know. So I want to go back a little bit, because you have had an incredible career that has really been inclusive of so many different aspects of being an artist. But I met you, and when we first became friends, you were an actor and are still an actor today, with like this whole renaissance and resurgence of you acting again, which is just, we're all very excited. But go back a little bit to sort of how DMG, you sort of fell in love with the arts and decided, like, I'm going to do this in earnest with my life.
Well, it was it's sort of a strange story that it really was strange and almost like a lightning bolt. It was kind of inexplicable. I was a kid who was not particularly bound for being a performing artist, let's put it that way. I was many things that just would preclude acting as a career choice. And one day I was at my public high school in Westport, Connecticut, Staples High School, and my friend Johnny Lessler asked me to help him hang lights for a production of Ondine with Leslie Palmer and Jeff Giannone. They were starring in it. And so I trudge over to the auditorium and climb up to the catwalk and proceed to hang Fresnels and Licos. And down there was Jeff and Leslie. And I watched them rehearse this scene. And out of nowhere, for reasons I will never understand, I thought, oh, so I'm going to do that. There would have been no evidence that I could do that, should do that, would in any way succeed doing that. It was as if I looked at a football field and said, I'm going to be an NFL player. No reason to have that thought, but I did. And so I climbed down off the ladder, and I found Al Pia, who was the head of the drama department at the high school. And I said, how do you sign up for play production? That was the class. And he told me, and I did. And honest to God, from that moment, I never, ever look back. There was never going to ever be another thing that I was going to do, except at that point, it felt like except act. And this was 100 years ago. And so
before, when it was still talkies.
Yeah. Well, before
talkies
they were
and just, I mean,
yeah, all
before
I had
talkies.
to do was make faces. But it was a very different time. And some of the qualities I didn't have that would have been good to be an actor was potentially a singing voice, which I had none of, potentially dancing abilities, which I had none of, maybe the ability to do an accent or something, not really. It was none of the above, but none of those were really what people were, at least my drama teacher was emphasizing. And at that point, not necessarily our contemporaries, but very much so actually in a way, we missed their premieres by 10, maybe 15, 20 years, but it was all about Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, Eugene O'Neill, Genet, Harold Pinter. It was all very much that kind of show that we put on. So when I was in 11th grade, I did a production of The Glass Menagerie, of course, played Tom Wingfield. There was one musical a year, and the other two plays were not musicals. So somebody like me, who was coming at it from a very sort of hard on your sleeve, basically wanted to be James Dean when I grew up, could excel. If I was in a high school now, I don't think they'd let me in the theater department door, because it's so much about different quality, it's so much about things that are not in my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. So you go on to Yale?
Yeah, so then I go to college briefly, but again, never really looked back. Felt like this was not going to be my life. So
right.
Dropped out of college and applied to a bunch of drama schools, including Yale, which I found out had a graduate professional school.
Right.
So that you could go to it without having a college degree. So I auditioned, and Bobby Lewis ran the department at that point, who was an old, group theater guy. And I got into the Yale School of Drama. And so I was like, here we go. So I left Connecticut College, where I had barely gotten in, and went and studied at Yale for 3 years.
And who were some of the people that you were in school with there?
Well, there were people that I knew there were a lot of different kinds of people that I met there, not all necessarily in my class. But one of the people I met was James Lapine, and James was working upstairs in a small little attic room in the drama school, where he was the graphic designer for the posters at the Yale Rep. That was his gig. So I met him. Wendy Wasserstein was there as a playwright. She was a few years ahead of me. Lewis Black was there actually in my class as a playwright. So he was there. Wendy. A guy named Ted Talley was there, who went on to be a very successful screenwriter. Mark Lynn Baker was there. And it was just a strange collection of incredible people.
A lot of times, it's a hard question to answer, because so many lucky things have to happen along the way to take one's love for something and allow it to be shared by people watching your love for something. So if you look back to sort of the beginning of your career, what would you say, like, well, this was really lucky and probably is the thing that helped me break through as a professional?
Well, I think that there are a lot of things along the road that you can talk about.
Yeah.
We can talk about it later, were instrumental in one of them. But early on, one of the most, I think, fortuitous moments was the day that I got an audition for the Eugene O'Neill Playwrights Conference, which is after I graduated from school. And I went in and auditioned for Robert Allen Ackerman, who recently passed away, or about a little over a year ago. And he hired me to go that summer of 1978, to Waterford, Connecticut, to be in a Vietnam play. I can't remember the name of it now. But when I got there, Martin Sherman was there that summer, and he wrote a play called Bent. And that play was being done in London that fall, I believe, and Ian McKellen was going to do it. And that was going to be its world premiere. And we were doing a workshop of it before the rehearsals began in London. And he had already cast an actor in the part of Rudy, the same way I was cast in the Vietnam play. And there was much conversation, and Martin Sherman went to the powers that be and said, he's Rudy. So I was like, I was not privy to any of this. So at some point, I got a call saying, there's been some shift in casting, and this other actor is going to play the part in the Vietnam play, and you're going to play Rudy. And that was a huge opportunity for me. And so I ended up doing the reading. It was beyond amazing experience. We did it at the barn there, and it was just beyond. Ben Masters was Max, and Jeffrey DeMunn was Horst, and it was incredible. And by the time I had left that summer, there was already talk about that play going to Broadway. And so when it did, it felt like I had a job.
And you did.
So that was definitely one of them.
My God. So how quickly are you on Broadway with Richard Gere, who whether he was a household name, was already Richard Gere?
Yes, he was very much Richard Gere. He had just finished shooting Officer and a Gentleman, I believe.
So he's blowing up for all
blowing
the
up
reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, American Gigolo is what had come out.
Okay, so he's a movie star. And so you're experiencing what it's like to be in a play, not just with great theater actors, but that thing that happens when everyone in the world knows who's in this play with you, not just theater lovers.
Yeah.
You are just a few years out of drama school, and you are on Broadway.
I'm a year out. Yeah.
1 year out.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, that play was game-changing in a lot of ways for Broadway for many reasons. Can you talk about your experience of being in that play at that time, and sort of what swirled around it?
Well, I mean, first up, we had done the reading at the O'Neill, and as a theatrical experience and as an actor, it couldn't have been more thrilling. Like, it was such a great part, Rudy. I mean, he's such a great part. And it was something that I felt comfortable doing as an actor, and made me feel confident on stage. So that was primarily the feeling, and it was mostly very well received. So it felt like, oh, this is a very important play, and all of that felt great. It was also about the Holocaust and its relationship to gays. It was really about how Nazis, didn't manage to have enough venom to go after gay men too, and gypsies, as we used to call them, and all sorts of evil. And I was, at that point, I guess, when we were going to the New Apollo Theater, I was 24. I had already gotten a movie that summer after the O'Neill Playwrights Conference called French Postcards, which had been written by Willard Hike and Gloria Katz, who had written not Diner, what did they write? American Graffiti. So this potentially was going to be some big movie. And I had also strangely shot, I don't know what I was thinking now that I think about it. I was also strangely shot a movie called Happy Birthday Gemini, which was based on Albert Inaudito's play Gemini, which was another gay story, actually. The point is that I had shot those two movies in the summer and winter of 78 and 9. And so when we went to New York with Bent, I was playing a gay and, for lack of a better word at the time, sort of, a feminine character, a dancer. And you couldn't be a gay actor in 1978 if you wanted a career. That was just literally impossible. So, and I had no intention of being a gay actor. So I needed to, any gayness that was in me was immediately and promptly ignored by me. I actually was seeing a girl who I had met in drama school named Karis Korfman, who since passed away. And she was a lovely girl, and she was in Amadeus. I think she was in Amadeus at the same time I was in Bent, if that's possible. But in any case, or soon afterwards. But I went into this very gay play that was specifically about that, as a extremely gay but profoundly closeted person, because the only thing that really mattered to me from the time I was hanging lights in Staples High School was being an actor. So it was the beginning of what was a very complicated relationship with acting and myself, obviously. And just this weird existence where I lived a completely double life, not externally, just internally. In terms of the world, I did nothing really. I was, not really involved with anybody at some point when Karis and I basically broke up. But inside, I was living an extremely conflicted life. But that said, to be on Broadway at 24 in a play that did, so well, to be on stage with Richard, who was a delight beyond words, just the best. And, I got to kiss him, 8 days, a week, twice on Saturdays and Sundays. And, when you'd leave the stage door, I have these pictures of that stage door mobbed, and you would stand there and sign autographs, your playbill. I mean, thrilling. It was funny because Richard was out one day. So I go outside to, here goes, the throng and the autographs. I open the stage door. There's nobody there. So
Right.
I was clearly just, I was like the warm-up act for Richard's.
Right. I love that you
the
said
autograph party.
I love that you said I got to kiss him 8 days a week. You meant 8 shows a week, but I do feel like that's how much you enjoyed kissing Richard Gere, that it added an extra Monday.
Yeah, I meant 8 times a week.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I've had so many interviews with people who, because they found themselves in a theater community for the very first time, that was where they saw so many gay people sort of living their best lives. Like finally, now again, generationally, maybe you're saying, sure, that may be true now, but when I started out, even even at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Festival or in Yale Drama School, or the places where people might find people like them. When you came up, you're saying, was there an unspoken code? Is this somebody you talked to about it? Did you see gay people together and out and go, oh, look, there's like a world where, or were you not gay? Did you not know that you were gay?
Oh, of course, no, I absolutely knew I was gay, but being gay when I was a young man was a very marginalized life. So there were gay people at drama school when I got to Yale. There wasn't a single gay actor, for sure. Matter of fact, I think if you went back to all the actors that were in the first, second, and third year at Yale when I got there, you wouldn't find anyone but me, I bet. There was Wesley Fada was the gay dance teacher, but he was a gay dance teacher that used to dance for Martha,
right.
And so it wasn't possible to be in the mainstream world of the theater unless you were decided to play that marginalized role. And there were people like that, Albert Inarado, there were people that did it, and brave people that did it, mostly playwrights I knew. But it wasn't something that you could do and be professionally successful. Now, at the same time, you have to understand the 70s was an explosion of gay rights. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily rights, but certainly gay expression.
Right.
You went to San Francisco and you went to New York City. Oh my God. I mean, it was gay. You could find gay so easily. Gay culture was exploding.
Right.
Studio 54 was the first.
Which you went to. You were there.
With Rick, thankfully for Richard. But it was, again, like there were gay people there, and but they were the window dressing for they were the titillation for all the straight people at Studio 54.
Right.
And also there was a lot of gay people that, you didn't necessarily, I at least found a little bit as cautionary tales. It didn't seem to me, but as brilliant as a writer as he was, it didn't seem like Truman Capote was really having all that much fun,
right.
Stumbling around. So it was an entirely different world.
Right.
I mean, the best way I can describe it is when I was a teenager, there was a book that came out, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex, but Were Afraid to Ask. And it was a guide to sex. And it came out when I was in high school, I think, high school. And I remember going, oh my God. And it was very well received by them. It was like, this is finally, the world is being, realistic and open about sexual behavior. And this is so modern and so, exciting. So I ran to look at the book, and I went to the table of contents, the index. And in the index, I found homosexuality. And it said page, 79-80. So I went to page 79. And there at the very bottom, and bleeding in a little bit at the top of 80, was the section on homosexuality. Now, I once tried to find this because in reprintings, this has been changed. But I would love to find someone to actually get that first printing of this book, because I did not imagine this. It said basically it was saying that homosexuals were men. It was a psychological disorder, and it was something that is very hard to break out of. And most gay men tend to develop into being alcoholics, lonely, without partners. Often they live in SROs. And they typically meet in bathrooms like the bathroom at Grand Central Station in New York City. But next chapter, Homo sapiens or whatever the next. So I'm like, this is not a life you want.
Of course. Of
So,
course.
but that said, the funny part about it, though, is that I remember getting off the train at Grand Central Station with my family to go see a Broadway play, and wheeling my mother, who was in a wheelchair, wheeling my mother down the concourse, and then, oh shit, like, there's the
I have to go to the bathroom.
There's the bathroom. Now,
I'll be right back.
I never had the courage to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something you can, there's nothing you can do. And, but it was not, so for me, I did not feel the theater was a safe place for me to come out and still be an actor, which is what I want to do.
Right. So, and of course, we'll get to sort of roles that you had later on, 30 something and things that ended up being like worshipped and
well, I ended up making a lot of gay stuff. That's the irony of all of this. I started with Bent, it goes on, and like all I was trying to do is not be gay, and all I ended up doing is gay plays.
Right. So let's talk about, when you talked about was it called Happy Birthday Gemini? Was that the film adaptation of the play Gemini?
Yeah.
That is where, if I recall, you met Madeline Cohn.
Yes, she played Bunny.
So can you talk about, because when we think about people we have lost who are so like forever indelible in our minds because of their unbelievably unique gifts and their singular talents. Many of us adored her. Few of us got to really know her. Can you talk a little bit about that time? Because you made that movie before Bent and clearly remained friends with Madeline.
Yes. I met Madeline in Toronto, where we shot Happy Birthday Gemini. Madeline was the most extraordinary human being you would ever meet. She fought a lot of demons, Madeline. She had a lot of stuff that she dealt with. She also was a genius. She was a genius in lots of ways, but she was a comic genius. She could sing the likes of which, you can't believe.
Right.
And she was a really astonishing actress. And probably the funniest person I've ever known. And if there's one thing I love, it's a funny person. And Madeline and I became very close. We shared stories about sort of what we perceived as problematic mothers. I think she had a lot of issues with her mom. I had issues with my mom at the time. And so we kind of bonded with that. We bonded with our own sort of like the things that we felt about ourselves that maybe the world didn't see, an insecurity we felt about ourselves. And there was just a connection that we had that was born of just a desire to be close to someone that we could trust. And so Madeline, was a very important person in my life, actually. We ended up in Santa Fe when together. My friend Tom Gardner had started a theater there, and I was doing a production of True West, and she was doing a production of Blithe Spirit with Victor Garber and Amy Irving, actually. So we were there over that summer, and I kept in touch with her for the rest of her life, really. And I, sometimes I see these clips of Madeline that sort of pop up on my Reels feed, and it's just shocking what an incredible performer she was. I watched What's Up Doc again about maybe 2 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
just breathtaking in it, like breathtaking.
When you worked with her, like, could you see like what paint she chose and what brushes she used, or what would it just happen in some way and you'd be like, what's happening?
It was sort of what's happening, and it was a very illuminating acting lesson, because it's important to sort of understand what's going on and to prepare, certainly, but I find often that the best acting I watch, and often the best acting that I feel like I've done, is born of a much more chaotic and unprepared origin. You just feel free to just be, knowing what you're supposed to be doing, knowing what your intention is, knowing what you need, knowing your lines. You just go out there and just not care. And she was able to do that. And she rode this sort of instinctual sense of how to be free in that context, and just brave and hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, she would throw herself into whatever accent, whatever song, whatever. I mean, it really is like, that's
She was
it.
just the best. And in her own life, like, she just, like, I remember, like, there'd be somehow she got something delivered, like a cake, and we'd be in the kitchen and like, oh my God. So we'd have a piece of cake and like, it's so good. And then she goes, well, that's the end of that. And she would take a can of Comet bleach, pour Comet all over the rest of the cake completely, put it under the sink, put some water on it, more Comet, and then throw it in the garbage. And I'm like,
Definitely not eating any more cake.
yeah. And she's like, if I just threw it in the garbage, I'd take it out of the garbage and have some more later on.
Oh my God. Oh,
You've got to put some Comet bleach on it.
and you're watching this happen.
Oh my God. She was.
Oh my God. You were also a part of what, undeniably is one of the most important theatrical moments in American theater history, which is the original production on Broadway of Angels in America, which, is something that will just remain this touchstone for everyone who got to see it, and then for people who study it for generations to come. So can you talk about, and you got nominated for a Tony, that was just so thrilling. Talk about how you became involved in that play as Joe Pitt. And I just want to ask you something else. Did you know how handsome you were?
Well, no.
Being cast time after time after time. Like, did you feel the way you looked?
No.
I still do.
I did not.
Okay.
I don't think a lot of people necessarily feel how they look, but
okay, fair enough.
But I don't know what I looked like. The play I had seen, because I knew Frank Bayer, who was a resident stage manager, sort of technical support guy at the Mark Taper Forum, and
Right.
They did a workshop production of the first play, Millennium Approaches, at a small theater, a 99-seat theater. I think it's in the shadow of the Ford Theater up Cahuenga. And so I went there and I saw Millennium Approaches with, I actually don't even know who was there in the cast. But it wasn't like Stephen Spinella or that, but it was like a revelation. It was insane. It was so great because it was so smart. And the thing that I will always say about that play, it's hilarious. That play is lots of things, including as funny as a Neil Simon comedy. I mean, it's just hysterical. And so I just couldn't believe that I just sat through something so smart, so moving, so funny, so on it. It blew my mind. And then it was sort of forgotten. And then I had, as you well know, because Alana Levine was very much responsible for another major moment in my life, but I had written a play called Snakebit, and its first production was at the Remains Theater in Chicago, and Hickey was in it, and Talia was in it, and while I was rehearsing that play in Chicago, they sent me via mail a script. Remember scripts? A script of Angels in America, both Millennium Approaches and Perestroika. And so, because they wanted me to audition. So
the Broadway production.
Yes. And at this point, I believe it was already, I think it had already been done at the Mark Taper in a full production, I think.
Okay.
But I hadn't seen it. But okay, so my only point is that I read the play and I thought, oh shit, like I understand this part. I get this part. A completely profoundly closeted Mormon who
married person.
Married Mormon, wanted to be nothing but a good person. That's all he wanted to be in life, was a good person. And so I was like, shit. So I ended up going from Chicago to New York to audition, going back to Chicago. I think I auditioned 5 times. In a moment that I'll never, I got the part.
Well, talk about that moment. First of all, when you auditioned, were you reading with Joe Mantello? Were you reading with other actors, or just on your own for the director and Tony Kushner?
Just George C. Wolfe and Tony was there for some of them. Yeah.
And was George C. Wolfe or Tony Kushner, I assume you didn't know them yet?
No.
Were they intimidating in the room? Were they warm and welcoming? Were they interactive? Was it firing squad vibes?
No,
like,
it
what
wasn't
was the
that.
feeling?
It wasn't that. They were very warm and welcoming. George was just George. Is like, do it again, David Marshall Grant. Blah, 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 blah. It's just like, it's just a whirl. It's a hurricane comes at you.
Okay.
And so, wow, and so I was thrilled beyond measure. Joe,
and you get a phone call from your agent and saying, you got it.
And then Mantello had done the production in Los Angeles, and he was going to be used again. Obviously, the guy who played Joe Pitt was not. And Spinella had done it. So there were a bunch of people, Ellen, Catherine Chalfon. There were a number of people that had done it already. So I was one of the people that was new. Me, Marcia Gay Harden, Jeffrey Wright. Those were the add-ons from that production in LA. Rehearsals were incredibly fun, also intimidating, and I felt a little unclear about the part, not entirely understanding how to do it, because I felt like the part was someone who was so desperately trying to be a good person, and the tone of our scenes, Marcia and mine, were very heightened, and Marcia was visibly, as her character was, visibly upset and really having a rough time.
Right.
And to try to meet that energy was tricky for me.
Yeah.
To try to meet the energy of Ron Liebman's Roy Cohn was even trickier for me. These were operatic performances, and I felt not quite sure how to get through it. My experience of the first production of Millennium was incredible, but I also felt like I hadn't quite understood the part yet. So doing it for a while, for a couple of months, while we rehearsed Millennium Approaches, which is a different play and had a different kind of vibe for Joe. I started
Joe Pitt, your character.
I started to find the character. So, but I think with about 3 months into the show, I was feeling really good about it. And I think my performance was pretty noticeably different opening night of Millennia Approaches to 3 months later. It was one of those things that I really evolved in the course of doing the show.
When you were doing it and feeling, and really it's truly the worst feeling ever in our profession, the line, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like
Yeah,
that's a horrible feeling, especially when you're surrounded by people who seem, doesn't mean they're
exactly.
not vulnerable, but that group seemed really invested in what they were
Yes.
doing with great clarity.
Yeah.
So if you, I mean, this is a while ago now, but how did you hold on to yourself? And was George helpful, or did you just keep going home every night? Would actors talk to each other backstage and sort of help each other out? Like, how did you get through
Yes,
that?
I think that I felt more like I didn't know what I was doing more than anyone else did.
Uh-huh.
But that said, I felt like some of it was the part, and people were just like, "Yeah, well, that's a joke.
That's a hard
Not
part.
a part.
Yeah.
He's not the funnest part."
Yeah.
But I found it to be an incredibly fun part. I mean, by the time I understood it more and was able to do it, I think it's a glorious part.
Mhm.
And I understand, like, every night there's a scene at the end of Perestroika after, like, whatever it is, like 6 hours of this thing, and Harper slaps Joe Pitt on the face. And nearly every night, there would be applause from the audience. And it always hurt because I felt like they weren't understanding
Right.
who this man was.
His pain, his journey.
They didn't understand. And
Yeah.
I thought I really did understand. I mean, he kept saying all he wanted to do would be a good person. All I ever wanted to do was be a movie star. I mean, just replace good person. You can't be there. There are worlds that you inhabit that you can't be gay in. And that's a tragedy, but that's how the person feels.
That's
So,
their given circumstances
yeah, and
in life.
the suffering in the wake of that problem, of course, I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying there are reasons people do bad things sometimes.
Well, that's the humanity, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the humanity, and that's Tony Kushner's genius, because
Mhm.
he gives great humanity to all of his characters, Roy Cohn included,
Oh, I mean,
right?
Louis
I
Cohn is
mean,
not only humane, he is hilarious. He's
right.
an amazing
He makes
character.
him a person that people are like, wait, I shouldn't be laughing. He's a monster, right? Like, why am I? Anyway, you get nominated, and that is a moment, that a lot of people who want to be an actor secretly dream about and think, oh, it'll never be
Yeah.
me, or of course, whatever that was. At the time, people weren't immediately getting texts before they even woke up to find out that they were
Yeah,
nominated. But do
yeah.
you recall that morning? And were you shocked?
I was shocked. I recall the morning. I was shocked. I was beside myself with joy. Also, the other thing is, not to go full circle, but also I was I was with somebody at the time, a man, and I I was, the entire cast knew I was gay, obviously. I still hadn't really said that publicly, but there was no reason to say it publicly. There was no internet. There was nothing. In order to say it publicly,
No one was asking.
you'd have to be interviewed by, like, Vanity Fair, and who's going to
Yeah.
interview me? So
Yeah.
it's not like I could come out of my little Instagram page.
Right.
But it was that play had sort of, it was the end of that journey for me. And
So what does that look like? Are you suddenly out with your boyfriend? Are you just using the word gay in conversation? Do you have an official coming out moment with your family?
no, that happened. The family was years ago, but it wasn't so
years
much.
before that.
It wasn't so much. Yes, it wasn't so much coming out because, I remember telling Jesse Nelson, my friend, what's going to happen when people in the business find out I'm gay? And Jesse said, David, it's okay. They already know.
Was that mortifying to you?
Well, it was obvious at that point. I mean, who was like kidding at some point? You know, it's just that nobody talked about it in 1999. It wasn't like, you know, you have to, you know, but it wasn't like forcing Kit Connor to like come out because of, you know, nobody,
So
you
there was
would
a
never
sort
do that.
of, when you look back, I mean, because I think about, you know, it was so much fun deep diving David Marshall Grant the last few weeks. And like suddenly I'm watching this Gwen Verdon movie
Yeah,
about the Rockettes, and you're, you know, once again playing the adorable boyfriend.
yeah.
Um, and by the way, I think it was called Legs. Didn't even
Like,
know
yeah,
that
good
movie
for you.
existed. And there's
Yeah,
John Hurd. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, this is
so good
incredible.
in it, isn't he?
Yes, you're all, I mean, I mean, it's like it's
And
a
Gwen
treat.
Verdon. Yeah.
What
My
a
husband
treat.
was like, you worked with Gwen Verdon. Couldn't believe it.
Yes. So, I mean, really, if you look at like the list of people, you know, I mean, when you think about like Devil Wears Prada, that you're Anne Hathaway's dad, like you are in everything. But I do want to just sidebar for a second. You know, you talked about Snakebit, really one of my favorite plays ever on the planet, not just plays written by David Marshall Grant. That was one of those plays where the first time I saw it, I didn't see it in Chicago. I saw it with Hickey and John Tenney and Matt McGrath and Cordelia Richards at Vassar at New York Stage and Film, directed by Joe Mantello. And that was the first time I saw it. And it was really one of those plays where I was friends with everyone in it. And afterwards, when I tried to hug them and congratulate them, I couldn't speak. Like I was such a hot mess.
Yeah.
And I felt like I wrote letters of
Well, let
apology to
me
each of
interrupt.
them.
Let me interrupt the scheduled programming here to tell your audience
Okay. Okay.
that in many ways, the reason why there, you know, it's impossible to know exactly. There was, I believe it or not, I like football, and there was a game last week where somebody pushed somebody, a quarterback, out of bounds at the very end of a game, and it
Yeah.
was illegal. It was a penalty that was 15 yards and enabled that team to be in field goal range with 5 seconds left. They kicked a field goal and they won. If
Are
he
you
had
speaking
not,
English right now? I don't know. Are we on? I don't
the
speak
point
football.
is, if it wasn't for that penalty,
Yes.
they would not be in the Super Bowl right now. Period.
Understood.
But
Understood.
it's never one game. It's never one
Right.
play. It's never one penalty. That said, if it wasn't for that penalty, they
They
wouldn't be
would
in.
be in the Super Bowl.
If it wasn't
Exactly.
for Alana Levine, I don't think I'd ever be a writer
Mm.
professionally, because Alana Levine asked to do a production of Snakebit at Naked Angels, and I said sure. So we started putting it together and getting the people that we were going to use, Jeffrey Knopf and whatnot, and I called in a lot of favors from like Neil Mazzella and stuff, and we were going to move forward with it. And then
Mhm.
Alana got a Broadway play,
Mhm.
so she had to leave, and we continued on without you.
Yep.
But and you continued on to have a glorious experience on Broadway.
Yep.
But if it wasn't for you spearheading that original production at the Grove Theater in New York, that 77-seat theater in New York City, it would never have been reviewed. I would not have gotten a call to work on this and do that. And I don't think anything, my writing career would not have been, I don't think. So there you have it.
I know. And I remember us having a conversation, and you were like, well, what about my play? And I was like, of course you can still do it. I'm not gonna make everybody wait until I could do it. Like it was all happen. I mean, the train had left the station. It would have been absurd.
Yeah.
And it's one of my, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so proud of that play. And I'm so glad that I was able to light the match that then, you know, brought this great
Yeah.
fire of talent into in front of so many people. I mean, as you said, it could have been the penalty and maybe someone else would have done it, but things have to all happen at the right time, at the right moment. And the New York theater world was really ready for that production. And then the buzz from that, as we know, led you down a path of writing a lot, a lot of plays, and really for the last decade, if not more, a
16 years.
tremendous 16 years of
16 years in a writer's room in network television.
television show after television show after television show, to the point now where, you know, whether it was Smash, where they called you in to sort of write a ship that needed some writing, and I mean
Well,
that not
no,
in
they called me in to work with Teresa, but there wasn't, I don't think they thought the ship, all I know, I never writed anything, or I never wrote anything.
I meant, okay, I guess come on and help shepherd this
Yeah, that's
really,
correct. That's
sorry,
correct. Yeah,
this show that was really new and sort of unprecedented.
that's
I
right.
just had Scotty Whitman on the show, and you know, now Bombshell is en route to Broadway. It's so crazy.
So exciting.
The people have demanded.
That
Yeah.
music they wrote for Smash is so exquisite. It's so amazing.
Every day I mean, I think about, like, we were talking, Scotty and I were talking about it, like, not only did you have to write a show within a show, right? Not only did you have to write a musical that felt like a real musical,
Yeah.
you also had to have the songs not just work for this pretend musical you're writing for Broadway, but the songs had to somehow be appropriate for the character and their story arc within the TV show. Like the number of things they had to have going on at one time.
Well, they had two musicals at once. They had the musical of their show, and then the musical that was Smash.
Yeah.
So, you know,
it's crazy.
It's crazy, but
it's crazy.
I
feel like
you've seen the new show.
Have I seen
Scotty and Mark's show?
Oh, yes, Some Like It Hot. Yes. Saw it. I mean, they're so prolific. It's extraordinary. And also, like, Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman, as people know, were a couple for a really long time. And it is a rare thing, even if you want to segue into continuing to create together when you're no longer romantic partners. And I feel like they have done it with such grace anyway, to go back to you, we've already had Scotty Whitman's episode. I feel like it, you know, at some point I was trying to pitch a show that I still think is a great idea. And you generously sort of came on to help sort of godparent the project when we were pitching it out in LA. And to see you, not just to understand as an intellectual concept, like David Marshall Grant now writes for television, but to see you in that element and sort of with so much confidence and understanding, like that is a very different machine than writing a play. And the way in which you understand so deeply the infrastructure, the mechanics, and remain such a creative person within something that is sort of a machine to a certain degree, whether you're writing for cable or network or film. It was really thrilling to kind of, you know, I felt like it was take your friend to work day and get to just see, and also how beloved you are on set. Like everybody loves you. And it's amazing.
Speaking of something really fascinating, though, there's something so likable, for me at least, about being a part of something that's creative with certain measures, a certain measure of guardrails.
Right.
There's certainly enormous guardrails on network television, but to see it as kind of a challenge, to try to find a way to create and to do things that interest you within these confines. For some people, it would make them fucking insane.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, it's enough to, they would go insane. For some reason, I see it more as a challenge, and, you know, more as a, you know, there's something about it I like, which is, I suppose I should talk to my therapist about it, but
well,
it's weird to work when you have certain guardrails.
Right. But I feel like that was in some way, like, one has to be called, like there's a calling to it. You're right. It isn't right for everybody. And that's what's so phenomenal. But you are I mean, if anyone ever sees your house, like the way, I mean, David Marshall Grant has one of the most beautiful, like he could have also been a designer. There's an aesthetic that's really important to you, but there's also a compulsive nature to how everything is beautifully and exactly in its place. And sometimes I would just move things around to see if you'd notice, and you would. So I feel like also I just want to say that David, in his sharing so honestly about his struggle with at the beginning of his career, sharing all of himself, is married and has an incredible daughter, and just such a magnificent family. And when I think about you and sort of talk about full circle, like from I'm going to play really straight roles to, just whatever it means to be out, just to be so beautifully in love.
Yeah.
That has been one of the things that just makes me so friggin' happy for you. You have recently been back on sets after years and years and years of writing stuff, in the makeup chair again. So talk about what that feels like, and is it like just the most fun now to just is it like a day at the spa compared to what it is
Yes.
to write the thing?
It is. It is a day at the spa, exactly, if you feel comfortable in your own skin and feel good. And I haven't really acted for 16 or 17 years. And
Right.
my memory of acting was filled with a certain measure of anxiety. And it wasn't always an easy process. But this part I did on Murder and Other Business, my friend Mike Weiss and Heidi asked me to do this part. It's a pretty small part, actually. It's in like probably, I think it's in 8 of the 10 episodes, but it's not a big part, but it's a fun part. It's got a little bit of, it's something it's enough for me to bite my teeth into without getting overwhelmed by too many lines and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it was such a great first step for me to just have fun with a small role. And I just had so much fun. And it reminded me of what I used to feel like and why I wanted to act. And it reminded me of the tribe that I haven't been a part of in nearly 2 decades.
Right.
Is the tribe that are actors. And
Yeah.
it's a crazy lot, actors. And there is a lot of things that can be overwhelming about actors, but at their core, actors are extremely it's a job that requires you to be so available emotionally so quickly that the intimacy that you can achieve while standing over the craft service table is unparalleled in any other industry. There are lots of like snack bars in other jobs. Writers
Right.
are endlessly standing over the snacks, but it's not the same in terms of what you know about each other. It's just not. And to find that, you asked me if I found safe haven in terms of being gay when I got to theater school. I didn't, but I did feel like I found safe haven in terms of being a human being. And there's something about being available and being with people that are available. Even though they may diva out at some point, they may fuck you up on stage, there's a deeper place. And I missed that. I realized I missed it when I was back in this group of actors. That a
Wow.
lot of them were from New York, like Mandy, and it was just a
Mandy.
Kenkin.
Sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just so we know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we've only scratched the surface, because it really is an interesting thing when someone has, had their hand in so many honey jars of so many different parts of this incredible career that you've had. And what an incredible thing to know that you can keep sort of reinventing yourself and having all these new chapters unexpectedly. And it's really thrilling to watch your ride and to kind of just cheer you on. And before I let you go, can you, I mean, you've been really generous and sharing so much, but is there a little known fact that you can
Yeah.
share with my listeners?
Yeah, well, I was asking my family last night, what should be my little known fact? And Evelyn said, well, that you cook. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's such a good one. And I thought of one, and I was sort of hiding the ball in order to save it for now.
Okay.
Because when I told you that it was not something that I should have endeavored to be an actor, there were lots of reasons why that's true. And one of them was that I was a pretty violent stutterer when I was a kid. And stuttering was something that I struggled with for a lot of my acting career. And as you know, there's a whole character that talks about this in Snakebit. And it's a true thing about me. And it plagued me enormously. A quick, I know we're going over, so you don't have to use this, but
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's a story that I think I told my daughter, and I think it's important because for any kid to know. But when I went to the Yale School of Drama to register, I went to the hall, and everyone was registering at the university there, the medical school and the undergraduates, everybody. So I'm going through the medical school, I'm looking for the drama school, and I pass the undergraduate school, and I see a little name tag, and it says, I think her name was Carol Omwick. And I was like, no. I said, excuse me, are you Mrs. And it said Carol Omwick, child psychology. I said, are you Miss Omwick? She goes, yeah. And I go, I think I may have seen you when I was a little boy. She goes, well, who are you? And I said, my name is David Grant. And she said, you're not Dr. Grant's son, are you? And I said, you're Arlene Grant's son? Yes. Oh my God, what are you doing? I'm sorry, are you a student at Yale? Yes. That's amazing, that's so great. And I said, what are you gonna sign up here? I said, no, I'm here, I'm at the drama school. You're at the what? I'm at the drama school. What are you a playwright? No. Do they do are there a producer? Like are you a producing student? No. I'm in the acting program. She said, excuse me, Barbara, can you take over the stand for a second? Come with me. Sit down. David, I teach you in my class. I have tapes of you. You had a violent stutter. You could not pronounce R's. I have tapes of you saying the wed wabbit. You were preternaturally shy. You carried a toy gun around, which you said you needed for protection. You were not going to be an actor. If you had given me a list of professions that I thought at that time you might be when you grew up, acting would have been the last possible one on the list. So you just never know, do you? And I said, I guess not. So the little known secret about me is that I should never have been an actor, much less anything else really based on.
Wow.
So you never know. So I don't know, I think kids should understand that. You never know.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'm going to get many emails asking sort of how you got through that and how you stopped being someone who stutters in their everyday conversation. Is that something just to follow up, and that's a longer conversation, is that something that you matured out of, or was it therapy and
Yeah,
tremendous hard work, a combination of both?
I don't know. I think there was some help that I got from Mrs. Omwick.
Yeah.
So clearly there was some intervention when I was in pre-K and kindergarten.
Yeah, speech therapy and
He
other
taught it.
stuff.
My mother was a pediatrician at Yale New Haven Hospital. So there was something like that, but I don't know, Alana. I will never know. I don't know what happened. I
Right.
know that I managed to compartmentalize it to a place where I could function, but once I sort of moved past it and became an actor at high school and drama school, there was always this lingering fear that that stuttering boy would come out again, and he
Right.
would.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll never know.
Right.
You just
Well,
know.
w- it's incredible. It's incredible.
It's difficult.
And how amazing to have that moment with her, and for her to
Yeah,
have
how
that moment
amazing,
with
right?
you. So beautiful.
I know.
Um, I love you, David. Thank you for
Love you,
being on the
Alana. Thank you for
podcast.
my writing career.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Bye.